Management Research.
Hello and welcome to the Management Research podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Hello and welcome to the next episode in my strategic management mini-series, and this is the Management Research podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Today we continue talking about the threat of entry. This is one of the forces in the 5 forces framework by Porter, and this framework is aiming to explain whether you can achieve the sustainable competitive advantage if you make the evaluation of the market correctly. In the previous episodes, we talked about different drivers that have impact on the threat of entry. It means how easy it is for your competitors to enter the market. We talked about the capital requirements, we talked about the economies of scale, and we talked about the absolute cost advantage. In our today's episode, we are going to talk about the product differentiation. And the entry to the market is very complicated if your product is very different from what is usually sold on the market. It is of course the question how you define the market and where you draw the line. Will you talk about the smartphones market? Will you talk about the communication market? Or will you be more precise and talk about the Android or iOS market? And it is important because it will have impact on what kind of answers you will get if you try to answer your questions. I'm going to give you as example the Android devices market. And why I want to give you this market is because the Android smartphones, at least up to the year 2016, they used to be very similar. They looked the same, they felt the same, and they were, as far as I know, obliged to use the same graphical user interface of the Android system. And there was a big debate or big argument that happened between the producers of these Android smartphones and Google. And the producers, they wanted to have their own graphical user interface because otherwise the products were not differentiable. I used to have several Android devices at that time. I could easily switch between different brands. I could switch from LG to HTC, from HTC to Motorola, because they all look the same. Small, minor differences in design that didn't really have impact on how the device was felt and how you were using it. And I think it happened about 2016 when Google allowed them to develop their own graphical user interfaces in Android devices. And then all of a sudden we started having different graphical user interfaces, like the one by the Samsung Galaxy, their very specific Android interface with the very specific icons that I think most people who never use Samsung really hate, and those who use it, they really love. We had the ZTE, the Chinese firm, which up to recent has been under sanctions, but their interface was very close to the iOS interface. They had the same style, more or less the same icons and so on. You have the Xiaomi interface, you have the ColorOS, this is the one from Realme and Oppo phones and so on. And they are a bit different, and honestly, the difference is not huge, but interestingly, I observed that those people who use now one brand, they want to stick to this brand because they get used to it. So to some extent, it was a successful strategy from the Android device producers to convince Google to allow them to create their own graphical user interfaces. But as you see, still they're pretty close, and previously I also switched from HTC to, I think, Oppo, and before that I had an LG. The threat that a new producer will come and try to produce a new Android smartphone is very high. It's easy, and you can easily get some people from this market niche into your market niche. I have recently watched the video where they introduced the new brand to the Android market in China, and assumedly the phone is not so bad, can attract some users, and it will attract the users from the Android device because the differentiation is low. And it is very unlikely that these new devices will attract users from the iOS users pool. Of course, it is about the product differentiation. The higher the differentiation, the harder it is to attract new customers, the harder it is to steal the customers from the competitors. What I want to say with this is that each time you want to enter a new market, think about how different your product is and how easy it will be for you to, let's say, get some customers from your competitors. If you manage to do it, it is really good. And I want to give you an interesting trick. What Samsung did, they made an app for iOS where you can install it on your iPhone, you can start the graphical user interface of Samsung, and you can try on your iPhone how it would feel if you had a Galaxy, I don't know, whatever, they have several devices Galaxy. And some people tried it, and if you like it, maybe those who are not too strongly tied to this iOS ecosystem, they will decide to go to Android phone, and in this event they would probably go for a Samsung. And again, what we have now, we have the Windows that tries to make the migration of different users from different systems to their system easier. They introduced now the interface for the Android devices. I think they also have interface for the iOS devices, I'm not sure. But anyway, you see that they are competing with the whole ecosystems, and now we see more or less the bundle Android, Microsoft against Apple, but Apple have also their computers with the iOS system and their smartphones. So will be very interesting. For you, it means you have to take care about how different your product is and how easy it is to switch from your product to something else, because if you can steal the customers from the others, they also can steal your customers. I hope it was interesting. I hope it will help you develop better business ideas and become successful. Wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.